Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. You may be thinking that some things have changed around here, and you'd be right. I've changed my channel name from Zenbound Miniatures to Ben's Painting Desk. Really, this choice was just made to have a name that felt a bit more familiar, a bit more welcoming, and something maybe a little bit more recognisable instead of just a random name. So I hope you can forgive the change and we'll get into today's video. I've had to take a couple months away from filming videos as I finished up university deadlines, but with them done I have more free time on my hands, and this has coincided perfectly with the release of the Wood Elves into the Old World. So I thought I'd revisit my favourite army, or my only army I have, but still my favourite, and show you guys some new painting techniques I've been using to get the models done a little bit faster than the original tutorial I put on the channel. The last few months I have been painting a lot, even though I haven't been making videos, and I've been working on my entry into Cult of Paint's MPO Bristol. I was having great fun on that, but it was a real challenging paint job where I was trying to push myself to my maximum all the time. And when I came back to my Wood Elves, I just didn't feel like going through the layering process and spending 3 hours on one infantry model. And I started to see lots more Grimdark painting on Instagram, and I was really inspired. So a lot of the techniques I saw on Instagram and other YouTube videos, I've tried to put into this tutorial, and yeah, they take about an hour each, so I hope you enjoy them, and let's get into it. So what do I mean by Grimdark? For me, Grimdark is a few things. It's conversions, it's oil paints, and it's texture and material, and they're three things that we're going to focus on as we go through this tutorial. So when we're putting down our base coats, I'm using a big brush and wet blending all my colours. Now don't be put off by wet blending, this is a great time to practice it. As I said, the oil wash we apply later will draw all our colours together and smooth out any transitions. When wet blending, we apply two colours just slightly thinned down on the model and begin pulling one into the other, creating a mix of colours in the middle. Once this is done, we can repeat again and also use a mix of the two colours and stipple this over the transition to help smooth out the blend. For the clothes of this elf, I used Rhinoxide as a base, blended into Mournfang Brown with Scrofulous Brown stifled on top as a highlight. For the fur on the back, I used a combination of Rhinoxide, Mournfang Brown and Kislev Flesh. The Dryad arms I paint with AK Faded Green, Rhinoxide, and add some ivory into that mix as well. Over the whole model, I'm trying to use a very minimal palette, mixing my colours to get different tonal variations to use on different parts of the model. Finally, for the metallics, I simply black out that area and stipple and sponge on some silver and bronze paint to create this warm metal look. The final stage in these base coats is to add some punchier highlights, as we need something to shine through when the oil wash goes on top. Again, here return to our palette and use our brighter colours to push the highlights across the model. For example, the armour and clothes, I'm using Scrofulous Brown and just roughly stippling it on with the end of my brushes to areas that we would normally highlight on the model. Whilst this may look messy now, don't worry, because the oil wash we apply in the next step is going to blend all this together and cover up any of this roughness that we've got. Before we get to the oils though, I just want to show you how to paint the horse and another variation of cloth that I've been working on as well. Now these horses I've put off for so long painting them, but they have got to be one of the easiest things to paint in the world, and they're really fun to do it. They literally take about half an hour each, and they look really great, and they're a really great circuit breaker from other models as well. Firstly, you want to grab a triad of colours: shadows, midtone and highlight. For me this is Rhinoxide, Mournfang Brown and Balor Brown. It's also really helpful to look up pictures of horses online to use as references to get your colours from. To begin, we're going to grab that shadow colour and smack it all over the model where a shadow would be. This is where Zenithal Primer is really helpful. Just smash it all on there and don't be afraid. Next, we take out the midtone and slap this all over the other areas, and again, just start pulling one colour into the other, mixing them together. Just work fast, don't think too much, and begin to get the feeling for blending colours together. Because next you can come in with a mix of these two colours and use these to smooth out any of these transitions, stippling with a big brush over the gaps. Finally, we grab our highlight colour and with a big brush just roughly sponge on the highlights, and again we can blend in some of these rougher areas if we need to. Again, remember this process is meant to be freeing and fun. It's a really good time to practice working with paint on the model, because we know we can always fall back on that trusty oil wash to smooth things out for us after. For the rest of the horse, I painted him using steps we've already mentioned, apart from slapping some Avalon Sunset on his eye mask and some Evil Sun Scarlet on the saddle. The final idea I wanted to share at this painting stage is sort of a work in progress, but I hope you may get some inspiration from it. I've seen my first Wood Elves painting tutorial, then you know I love autumn colours, and I tried to create a scheme from the yellow, red and magenta found in autumn leaves. Whilst I still love that scheme, I've always wanted part of my army to represent the dead, decaying or dried up leaves that also come in autumn. To begin with this scheme, I start with a base coat of Kislev flesh, and again begin to blend in some brown toes into the shadows and highlights with some ivory mixed into Kislev flesh. With this base coat down, I then take my brown colours and begin to draw lines and blemishes over the cloak, trying to represent the patterns found on dry leaves. Finally, I just glaze over small areas of the cloth with Evil Sun Scarlet and Avalon Sunset to get some red and yellow variations into our mix. With that, the underpainting is done, and while honestly the models at this stage look really messy, we've achieved what we set out to do, and that's getting paint on the models quickly, building up some contrasting areas and some highlights and some shadows, so now we can hand it over to the oil wash to come in and do their job, tidy everything up and give us that grimdark look. To start the wash process, you'll need something to mix your paints and white spirit on. I recommend grabbing a cheap metal palette like this, as it can be easily washed and reused. Next, you're just going to want to dollop out a little bit of each colour and mix in some white spirit until you have a wash consistency. Then, to begin, we're going to hit the horse and the rider with an overall dark brown wash. So I'll mix some black and umber and then add my white spirit. We're going to grab a big old brush and start slapping it all over the model, just completely covering all parts. Then we're grabbing a paper towel, and be careful it's one felt not like a toilet roll but more like a kitchen cloth where there's not lots of fibres on it. And we'll use that to soak up excess wash on the model and leave it to dry for about an hour. On the glade guard here, I'm mixing up a yellowy brown wash using the ochre and umber oil paint. I'm using this all over the cloaks and capes where we create that dead leaf texture. To add a little more interest, I'm also using our previous dark brown mix over anything else, and a little bit of red wash onto the cape too. Once our minis have been left to dry, we can come back in with a makeup brush dipped in some white spirit and slowly start rubbing away the oil wash. I'm sure you've heard about this reductive method before, but it works in the opposite way of highlighting, but achieves the same result. Instead of adding on paint to create those brighter areas, we're removing wash to leave brighter areas underneath. With that, the painting is finished, and if you wanted to, you could stop the tutorial here, but I think to really get that grimdark look, we need to add more texture to our models. I've seen so many great ways to do this on Instagram recently, and in this video, we're going to be using some cotton buds to create some hair, some cheesecloth to create capes and eye masks and stuff like this, and then really just going to town on the base to try and make it look as realistic as possible. First up, we're going to use cotton buds to create a hair texture. This can be used to create a more realistic looking horse tail, or used around the top of the cape to create a fur collar. Cheesecloth is great for making capes, adding texture to clothes, but in this case I've had it over the eyes of my horses. I imagine these wild riders are able to ride without seeing the forest around them, but just by sensing their riders' commands. Flock can be used to fur collars as well, or adding a bit of camouflage or grassy mane that makes it look like the riders are merging with nature or a part of it themselves. Finally, I use some really thin jeweler's chain to create a rein for my horse. This principle of texture extends to the bases as well. Where I used to only put a few decorations on the base, I'm now trying to add much more interest to create a deep forest feeling. I'm still working on this approach, but by using a combination of birch seeds, sticks, stones, cork, tufts, moss and texture paste, we're able to build up a base that feels much more alive. Once you have all your basing materials on there as well, I recommend giving all them an oil wash as well to tie everything together. Admittedly, these do take these models out of the realm of a simple speed paint and into a bit more involved army project. But I know personally I'm not someone to speed paint, and having this sort of extra modelling stage at the end of the painting process just adds enough variation that it makes it really exciting to return to these models. Each model can be made different, and it just really makes them feel alive. And compared to a project where you're really trying to push your painting and just focusing on that, this feels like a really fun but different way to improve your models or just spend time working on them. Whilst I still love my old Wood Elves, I definitely plan on following this approach in the future for my army. It's just a super fun and engaging way to make the models look more realistic. It's quicker and it just feels more freeing compared to a proper painting project where I'm really trying to focus on each stroke. So if you made it to this far in the video, I just want to say a massive thank you for watching it, and I hope you've enjoyed the tutorial. I'm now going to be returning to monthly uploads on the channel, so if you like what you've seen here, then please consider subscribing and checking out some of my previous videos. You can also follow me on Instagram, where I'm going to be starting to post mini tutorial PDFs or posts just with some of my other army project ideas that I don't really have time to make videos about. So if you like my Wood Elves, then please check out my page there too. Finally, I just want to say thanks again for watching, and I hope when you get time to sit at your painting desk, you enjoy it, and good luck with all your painting and models. See you in the next one. Goodbye.